And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another weekly review with The Robot, brought to you by the Movie Pope. And here he is, bolts and nuts akimbo, The Robot.
Whenever you watch those old Disney movies, you're not necessarily thinking on a higher, theological level. Instead, you're approaching it from a sentimental level, wanting to see the princess overcome much adversity and find love and live happily ever after. Also, if the evil queen or stepmother can get her comeuppances in the most satisfying way possible, that'd be perfect. If you're thinking from a theological or religious perspective, chances are people are gonna look at you like you've grown a second head. Or, in my case, morph into a 20-foot iron giant that wrecks the city like something out of a whacked-out sci-fi flick from the 1970s. I would like to review one of those sometime, assuming the powers that be actually allow me. Anyway, as it's the Easter season and I'm still getting over hanging out with the fam for Passover, I'm diving into the classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, and by the end, maybe you'll see the movie from a whole new view like me. Per Snow White, in order for the evil queen to meet her end, Snow White had to die. She was sacrificed, really, so that evil may finally meet its end. Good must first perish. Wow, that's pretty heavy. I'll give you a moment to collect yourself. We all good, great. She isn't expiating the sins of the world, and she isn't advocating a religion or preaching anything that will resonate. But her mere presence, coupled with her acts of kindness and love for everyone and everything, speaks volumes. So who would want to hurt her? It paints in stark colors the nature of good and evil. Snow White is pure good because of all I just mentioned, and that she suffers a terrible fate that was undeserved by someone who deserves it far worse. And the people around her who would go to bat for her are a testament to her goodness and how they see and feel about her, not out of slavish routine but chosen as an exercise of the will. Not one of the dwarves balks, but they act collectively to avenge this injustice. What they do reflect how they feel about this person, and they feel that she is good and worthy. The Seven Dwarves are at first hesitant to welcome her. After all, who's this chick just barging in and interrupting their flow? I'd be just as annoyed if someone did that to me. But as they acclimate to her, she becomes an integral part of their lives, so much so they would do anything to protect her. But in the end, the evil queen gets her and she falls into a sleep. If I may, for a minute, put on my theology hat, there are a lot of parallels between them and the 12 apostles. A bunch of fishermen and other occupations who get caught up in Jesus' ministry, and, by degrees, they don't take it too well when he predicts that he's gonna end up dying in Jerusalem. Of course, the Seven Dwarves aren't going off to preach the gospel of Snow White and end up being martyred one by one, but they show the same level of devotion and, in some ways, put on a show of force in defense of their beloved leader. I'd take it a step further and add that the dwarves are a reflection of us, and the question they ask is just how ardent are we in our love and devotion that we are moved to act. Let that sink in. There's no doubt the queen is guilty of the sin of vanity, so much so that it consumes her life and she resorts to contracting people to murder someone who, really, is just minding her own business. This is the mindset of a terrorist or something. She just obsesses over Snow White and how to get one over her just to be the only hot chick in the realm. Some bragging right, that is. That attitude alone proves the opposite of what she's seeking. Rather than being beautiful, she just displays her ugliness. And man, I wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. She exerts fear over people just to get stuff done, which is a pretty exhausting prospect. A queen who obsesses over the pettiest of things and flies off the handle easily cannot be worth anything. She allows her fear and neurosis to get the better of her. She isn't her own person, but just a weird conglomeration of all this negativity. And man, not even Karl Lagerfeld can pretty that up. When you look at Snow White and the Seven Dwarves on the surface, you see it as a fairy tale that's been popularized by Disney, feeding the imagination of kids since the 1940s. But I would advocate for a deeper reading into these movies, to see something much deeper. In other words, to reread from an adult perspective, adding on to the one we created when we first saw them as children. St. Paul said that he put away childish things when he became a man, but I say, take these childish things and see them through a new angle. Snow White may not be the Disney Jesus, but she very much reflects the purity that comes into the world and must suffer. Those in the world are stirred to action and must decide whether to flee before evil or, by sheer determination and an act of the will, stand up and extinguish it so its influence stops. The movie was made in 1937 as the world was getting ready for a calamitous war, and I think it exemplifies the adage the only necessary thing for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. The dwarves were certainly moved to act, but it would the real world another 3 years before they did the same. Thanks for watching, and if you don't mind, please leave us a like, it helps a lot. And while you're at it, subscribe so you never miss an episode drop. This is the Robot signing off.